perfect.
Okay, so this proposal is about ensuring that council has adequate funding in this next financial year for the purchase of a neighbourhood park in Stage 1 Peacock. Just to give you an idea of area, it will be close to the new roundabout on Ohaupo Road. Open for questions.
Are there any questions on Councillor McPherson?
Thanks, Paula. Thanks, Maria, for that very brief summary. Maria, given the latest news, which I'm not going to discuss now, which came out in an executive update a short while ago, is this something we should be just checking about the timing of? Is there a risk that we may be allocating expenditure when there's some doubt about some aspects of this project? Let's not say any more than that.
Sorry, Councillor Dave, I haven't seen the latest executive update, so not able to comment.
Okay, maybe Lance might like to answer it. Sorry to put you in that position, Maria, and I wouldn't have asked that had we not just received that during the meeting.
I think I could answer that, Councillor Dave, that this land is needed for a park, and as you'll see from the description in there, it's really around some of the inflationary pressures, and probably the size of the park is a little likely to be a little bit bigger than originally thought. So what you're referring to, I don't think there's a particular risk. I think the timing, I don't have an answer to that. I'd probably have to talk to Andrew Parsons, who's been involved in the land deals and the negotiations with various landowners through the area. I'm not sure if Andrew's still on the call. Oh, there he is. He's popped up, so I might just hand over to him, Councillor Dave.
So sure. I think there's a risk here that we're going to confuse things. So this is simply the acquisition of a neighbourhood park. That's normal process as part of any subdivision or land use consent that Maria's team would be involved in. So it's not involved in, it's not part of the major Northern Sports Park acquisition.
No, nothing to do with that, Andrew. Nothing to do. Have you seen the executive update?
Yes, I have.
Well, okay, it's not to do with that. It's a, you know, Paula, perhaps this might be better to be discussed back in PX, because I have a concern that the news we've received confidentially may affect the timing of the entire development over there. So, you know, I think it's legitimate to ask questions about this. It's absolutely zero to do with the Northern Park. It's to do with what's happening up front in the early part stage.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I get where you're coming from now. I was just a bit slow to catch up with what you were talking about. We can leave this one aside and come have a little bit of around the confidential elements, have a discussion. What do staff advise on that, Lance?
Oh, look, I think Councillor Dave's got a good point. I think it would be easier for all involved if we did go into public excluded to discuss it.
I'm not going to do that now because we've just come out, so I'll do it at the end.
No, I think we do it at the end, Mayor Paula. I think it can wait till then. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll just so move that this item be moved into public excluded. Deputy Mayor Taylor seconds. All in favour? Any opposed? Okay, so that will come later in the piece. So now we'll move on to the next item, which is the Rototuna Passenger Transport Facilities.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. I've just sent out the details of where that is.
Yeah, so, yep.
Robin, are you talking to this?
I thought Chris Allen was going to, but I can't actually see whether he's on or not. But if he's not, I can.
Yeah, so just get a very briefest of outlines because we've got the information there. It's been well canvassed.
Yes, so I
Robin,
guess initially this project was put forward as a $6 million project to do physical works. As Chris outlined in the workshop, there are various reasons why there's not the ability to do physical works next financial year. There is some additional work needed to do a study for this area and understand exactly what public transport interchange. It's not an interchange, it's a hub. It's the ability to move between a limited number of bus services and to provide for bus driver facilities in this area. And so what staff are proposing is that we look to $100,000 to enable that study to be completed. That will then put us in a position to be able to understand the exact costs of what's needed there and to be able to work through potentially getting some Waka Kotahi subsidy in order to complete the physical works. So with that, I see Martin's joined, but with that, we could probably take questions and work through from there.
Okay, Councillor McPherson.
Yes, Robin, and I have discussed this issue with Chris Allen recently, but I'm not aware, can you advise me otherwise if I'm wrong, that there's actually been a elected member / committee discussion anywhere about this? You've just said it's not an interchange, the hub. I would have actually thought the reverse, but we might be a terminology or sort of a situation there. But the whole issue is in doubt because of some different piece of infrastructure or kit is in doubt because of some completely different issues to do with water quality and the regional council, one arm of the regional council having a different view from every other arm, sort of thing. I'm just wondering whether there needs to, before we go down this track or any track, we need to have a discussion amongst ourselves, because this has been a slightly contentious issue, and whenever it gets raised, and we're always promised a discussion, I don't think we've had that discussion within our own council to get to this next stage. So I'm asking you where we've sort of made the decision to go there.
No, so I agree, Councillor Dave. I don't believe there has been a decision made. But I guess as part of that Rotorua Village, there was always an expectation there would be some sort of bus facilities. Certainly this process, I think, needs to have probably several good workshops with elected members and needs to pull in the work that's happening for the Metro Spatial Plan, probably the Regional Passenger Transport Plan update. Martin's been working with Regional Council on the Rotorua service, potentially called the Rocket. So there's quite a few streams of work that really need to all come together and be looked at. And I would see some workshops, multiple workshops with elected members to actually work through that. And this would be funding to enable those workshops to work through exactly what is needed and where, what it looks like, and potentially get some concept designs so that we could then progress through to looking at funding applications with Waka Kotahi.
Yeah, you've talked about workshops and scoping and that sort of thing, but this is a request for money for a business case, which is the next stage, I would have thought, after all of those took place.
It's all, I see it as all being part and parcel of pulling together a business case, if in fact we need a business case.
So what if look, I'm concerned about the amount of expenditure for something that may or may not happen, or certainly might be smaller than some envisage. And
if it's, I guess if that value of money is based on some work that we have recently completed at the Waikato DHB, looking at public transport hub facilities, I would see that as worst case scenario. If those early workshops determine that it's something a lot less, then the funding won't be spent. So that was seen as a worst case scenario for if we do, through those workshops, decide that there's something needed there and that there's opportunities to work through a business case in order to potentially unlock waka kotahi funding.
Okay, this in some other areas we've gone for amounts that aren't the worst case scenario. We've gone for maybe slightly higher risk, smaller amounts. But I'm not going to die in the ditch over it. But it almost seems like a poke in the dark, sort of at the amount.
The work that we've just done for the Waikato DHB was 132,000. So it's not a complete stab in the dark, Councillor Dave.
Okay, Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, did we not buy a piece of land back in September out at the Rototuna village for the purposes of this, or potentially for a purpose of the passenger transport hub?
Yes, we did.
And so is this all focused around that particular piece of land?
That's
Yes,
correct.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? So what's happening in chat? Okay, so is there someone to move and second this? No. The big pause kind of gives me a feeling that people are not quite there, Robin, with this one.
Hey,
Have
look,
I got that?
Paula, I'll move it pro forma. I'm yet to make up my mind whether I support it, but I think it deserves to have a vote at least.
Paula.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, just on that, I'm wondering, with the pool, we didn't actually make a decision. We asked for, we were going to ask, well, originally it was to ask for more information to come back before the annual plan. That did change, but I'm wondering with this, could we actually just to start with ask for more information and maybe an opportunity for a briefing first?
I don't think we've got time, to be honest, Sarah. We're running up against the wire. We need to get the draft plan out, and that's why that's the approach we're taking. So either goes in for consideration in the draft plan, it may move out later, or it may stay in, or it doesn't go in at this point in time in the draft consideration. The staff can bring a report to the next, when we get the draft plan and we get the submissions, etc. When we come to debate the final plan, sorry, tripping over myself here, staff could advise us at that point with some greater information if that was a will of most councillors.
Would that require a motion to say bring back that information at that point?
Look, the staff can propose. Lance, put me right here in your report.
Well, I think we just make a committee note and that we bring back the information. And I think Councillor Dave was saying, there's an initial discussion to happen. You've got a couple of options. Is then once you've had that discussion and you've had the information, is you can either bring it back to the May meeting of the annual plan, or you could bring it back to the Finance Committee or the it's probably Infrastructure Ops Committee, which can then make a recommendation to the Finance Committee or Council in the future. So I think you've got a couple of options there. But I think the first thing is
sort of laying it on the table. Is that what you're saying? That would,
yeah. So have that discussion, Dave, and then from there, you've got a way forward. You either bring it through a committee at a later stage, or if that discussion happens before the May annual plan meeting, then you can bring it back to the annual plan.
Okay, councillors, from my point of view, we can't keep delaying making decisions. I'll just say that. We do have to pin some things down, otherwise it's like jelly.
Paula, could I move a resolution at the item, is it FV11, F7, lie on the table pending a council discussion prior to the May annual plan meeting and be reported back to that meeting?
I don't think that works, Lance, because the point of view is we are trying to land on a final financial consideration for the draft annual plan. My preference would be to do that today. And then if, of course, that doesn't mean when we come for our final discussion, the staff couldn't recommend something to go in there based on good information. So we can still do what you're suggesting, Dave, but I don't think that's the resolution, because otherwise we could have done that with a number of resolutions and we wouldn't have a final budget, would we?
Well, you would. You'd just have one without that in there. But look,
yeah, but then
Paula,
that could be the thin end of the wedge for some others as well.
This way, I think Lance has suggested a path forward that I personally would agree with. So I'm going to withdraw my pro forma moving of the motion, leave it up to someone else if they want to.
Yeah, so nobody does. So I'm going to move. We have to vote against the staff recommendation at this current time. Happy to move that. And if it comes back through the other process, it comes back. Deputy Mayor Taylor, are you seconding with me? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So I move that we don't include this for the draft annual plan.
Well, because so you're saying you just want to leave it as is without that being included by not doing a motion. That's what we do.
Okay, so we don't do.
We don't have to do anything. It just
all right. Excellent. So it's not in it. It's not in as it stands. It may or may not come.
How do we ensure, Paula? Sorry, I want to ensure we have that discussion, and I think it's wise to have it before the annual plan. So how do I do that? That's what I was trying to move and read it out.
So Lance suggested it was in a minutes note. A note.
Okay.
Yeah, just a minute note, and then staff will bring it back, Dave, to a workshop or briefing session, or through the committee. So we'll get Eva, Lisa, and Robin to sort through that
without moving any specific motion at this point.
No, I think you just have a committee note and the minutes around that.
Paula, is that okay to do then?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. I think that's fine.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on now to the next item, which is the Garden Place, Civic Square, Whirly Place Shared Zone study.
So just a quick overview, I guess that this has been a topic of discussion through the Central City River Plan working group. There have been various concerns expressed about the safety of pedestrians in particular trying to cross the shared zone. And when we have events happening in either Civic Square or Garden Place then to put any sort of temporary traffic management in place or limit vehicular access through there does have some costs, and that makes it hard for those event organisers. So we've been asked as staff to provide some indications as to what are potential improvements through there, and the recommendation at this stage is to give some funding to have a look at how elected members want to see both Garden Place and Civic Plaza work, and therefore what role the shared zone should play in amongst that, to get a clear direction on where to from here. And I'm happy to take questions from that.
Okay, questions. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor Paula, actually it's not a question. But I felt as chair of the Central City Advisory Group, I should make clear that I don't intend to support this year, and I think it should be
hold that to debate, please.
I just thought it might be helpful. That's all.
Well, no, it's ahead of the debate. It's not that helpful, but thank you anyhow. Councillor McPherson, question.
Always happy to help.
Yeah, I could see with help like that who needs. No, never mind. Look, that's really the same process question as the last one. Has this arisen out of a council meeting or some general chit chat? Because I'm not aware that there's been any request for changing something, and there's certainly, I am aware that some people think it's broken, but others don't. But there's no, what's driving this? Because I haven't seen anything come to a council committee meeting or council meeting about this proposed change. So I sort of wondering along the lines maybe Jeff was.
So it was a report that was done through the Central City Working Group and River Plan Working Group, and that included, councillors will probably remember, a site visit down to Civic Square. It is one that we have been asked by staff to put up some recommendations, and at this stage there is no funding to do any changes to either Whirly Place shared zone, or that includes changes to improve safety or to make it easier for events organisers. So it really is very much in elected members' hands as to whether this is something they want to progress or not.
Thank you. And
Okay, so sorry for the question. If an event wishes to close a piece of road, they can just apply and there's a little process to follow. Could they not do the same with Whirly Place to close the road if needed?
So they have to either apply at least 42 days ahead of the event in order for us to go through the traffic regulations process, or we have to have a specific resolution of council through the Local Government Act 1974. So it depends on the timing of that application. And then there are costs associated with putting the temporary traffic management in place.
Or police can just close it if there's too much safety risk anyway.
Correct.
Which they do on some other roads, do they not?
So I'm not aware of them doing it on other roads within the city, but they do have that right if they need to.
Yep. Thanks, Paula.
Rob, look, I will just, before I go to Rob, put my hand up and say this is an area of concern to me, and that doesn't mean that as my colleagues you need to agree with it or agree to do it right now. But I'll talk to in the debate why I think that area is in need of some love and attention. So that's partly the staff are responding, as they have with other members, with their requests to something that is reasonably important to me. But we'll get to there in debate, and either I'll persuade you or I won't. It's all good. Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you, Paula. My question really is around what we need the 50,000 for. Is it for existing staff time, or is it for the employment of consultants, given that it's only a plan, isn't it?
It would be primarily some staff time, but I think we probably need some consultants to look at. So it's an opportunity to look at suggestions such as the Dame Hilda Ross Way, to look at other opportunities for such as cycle facilities in Garden Place. We've been asked variously to do changes in Civic Plaza to make that a more welcoming, useful space. So it provides that opportunity to look at, as I said, how those two areas work, and therefore how you want the shared zone to support those two areas working.
Do we not have the expertise in-house to do that? Look, I'm no expert, but there's a fair chunk of really good infrastructure in and around those spots. Isn't it really a matter of just moulding that infrastructure into some workable options rather than...
From a transport perspective, we don't have design. We always look at getting consultants to do our design work. We many years ago decided that Hamilton City would not have a design function within it.
Okay, and you think 50,000 is well and truly sufficient to cover what needs to be done, or could this, sort of grow like Topsy in terms of satisfying everybody's needs?
That will be up to elected members to manage and decide how far they want to push the scope for this.
Well said, Robin. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Exactly. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Hey, Robin. So this isn't actually a design. This is a plan to design, isn't it?
I guess it's a investigation to get some clarity around how those areas work, how they could work better, and therefore how that shared zone should support that. Should it stay as it is? Should it be closed part of the time? But all of those sorts of things could be looked at.
Yeah, okay. Hey, can you tell me how many events have actually needed to close Whirly Place in the last year or maybe 2 years? I suppose it's a little bit out of context. It's last year. So on average, how many?
Most events choose not to because it takes time to either do it or there's a cost involved. Whether they should have closed it is a different matter, because the concern is that particularly children, but people are not necessarily expecting cars to be driving through there while they're trying to walk between the two spots.
Right. So how many times has it been closed so far?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I would say it was a very irregularly that it actually does get closed.
Okay, cool. Now, being an annual plan as opposed to an LTP plan, what's changed since the LTP that would mean that we would have to fund this now?
This is a question that was raised through the Central City plan for us to investigate. I've put up an option, and it really is whether elected members are comfortable with the situation as it is down there or not.
Cool. And now the Hilda Ross Way thing, I saw that referenced in there. Now, I was fairly well assured that we could do the investigatory work within budgets. Are you saying we can't do that unless we do this? Because I'd be quite worried.
No, I'm just saying that it could incorporate that sort of thing, and I guess take a bigger view than just looking at that Hilda Ross. So that would be, it's recognising there is those sorts of pieces of work happening in and around this area as well. Okay,
no, that's cool. That is, so there's, okay, so thank you very much. No, you've answered the questions. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Robin, was this OPEX or CAPEX in terms of the study, or does it get capitalised later?
It's OPEX.
OPEX, okay. But it doesn't get capitalised if we do the work?
It depends what we decide out of it. It's probable that some of that work won't be a high capital cost moving forward, so it probably doesn't get capitalised now.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of, I guess, doing work going forward, is it preferable that we've got something in place before LTP deliberations so that can inform any future work here? And if we were to fund it, say, in the next annual, have it funded in, say, the 2023-24, would that still allow time?
So yes, you could do that, fund it in the study investigation work in the next financial year, not next one, the year 3 of the LTP, to be clear, current LTP. If you got on and did the work, then yes, you could probably get something done in time to feed it into the LTP process, but you would have to be pushing it to make sure that it did feed into that process properly.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, and we'll get to Martin. In terms of the conflict between pedestrians and vehicles, which we observed when we were standing there in that field trip, that site visit, as you may recall, we saw that happen a couple of times while we were actually standing there. Is there any, I doubt there is, but you prove me wrong, is there any data on near misses or slight bumps of people against cars or any of that kind of thing? I know people also move the planters back occasionally to get better vehicular access through there. They just shove them out of the way, we shove them back again. Is there any data around that, about, health and safety data about pedestrians or whatever through that area?
We don't have good data on that, Mayor Paula. We do get reports at times from members of the public and often staff expressing concerns based on experiences that they've had, but we don't have, it's not like the reports that we get if there is an actual incident and somebody is injured and the police are involved. Okay. So it is very ad hoc.
Yeah, so we do keep all of those in one place now, or there's complaints and concerns, or just deal with them one by one?
Deal with them one by one.
That's a shame. And just because it's a slow speed environment, I guess you're not likely to see significant issues, but you're saying you still get people saying it was a close call or commenting on driving behaviour there?
Yes, I think the big thing is at the moment the public pedestrians tend to give way to the cars.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So yes.
Couple more questions. In terms of I call it affectionately or unaffectionately, do you decide the rumble strip because of the cobbles, because they go rumble, rumble, rumble. They're so loose at times. Now, in terms of the rumble strip, when is it planned again because they've been turned and reset again? They've been reset before, a couple of times, I understand. How many times have they been refixed, and when's the next? Because there's some loose ones at the moment. When is the next maintenance of the loose surface due, just out of interest?
So I guess there was some major work done with a relay. We picked up the majority of that area and relayed it, and changed the crossfall to try and improve the drainage, because it was felt that would help with them holding together. It has improved somewhat, but they do continue to work loose. At this stage, we go in and periodically go through and tighten up and put some more paving sand in place as needed. There is no plan for a long-term replacement or renewal in that section, because at this stage we don't have clear direction as to how elected members would like to manage that. So if, for example, as part of this, we decided to close it more regularly, then the current situation will be able to last a lot longer. Sorry, me, Paul, I interrupted.
No, that's fine. And I don't really want to go into a leading question, but just a factual one. This isn't intended to be leading or might be read that way.
Sorry, laugh out loud there, Paula. Sorry.
I know. I'm trying to avoid making kind of like a debate by default. But in terms of the periodic relaying of loose things, loose blocks, do you think we've gone over 50,000 worth of work yet, or not yet? How much do you think that's cost altogether, with the one significant job plus the occasional refixing of loose cobbles, just out of interest? Because this is 50,000, right?
Yes. So if you take the full relay that we did and subsequent localized tidying up, that would be more than 50,000. Yes.
Just in terms of the cost of closures to groups, I did know this, but I've forgotten, because groups have approached us saying, they have to go through a traffic management plan, and even though they may get that, it's laborious and time consuming and slightly more costly to them. Whereas if they could pay a fee for standard bollards to be erected for known events, not every day, but big events like the Children's Day, for example. So how much does it cost for a group on average to close that street for an event?
So this is certainly off the top of my head, but I think you're in the order of $10,000, because in order to close that, you've got quite a few trained people who have to man the closure, and you're also putting a detour in place from Victoria Street, for example. And so temporary traffic management, because of the increasing focus on risk to road workers, etc., is getting more expensive. So and as I said, I'm not certain of the price, but for voluntary groups who tend to be the ones that are holding these events, it is beyond them to fund the temporary traffic management, which is why they tend not to.
Okay, so that's fine. That's actually a bit stunning, the amount. But anyway, that's great. Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that. Councillor Gallagher.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. I, obviously witness cities overseas. I don't have a problem personally with a share with care, and I wouldn't want this to be the thin end of the wedge where we prejudge that share with care. Others will have to infuse. The 50 grand now, how much would that help us towards putting in some assessing, and do we need it? To have some basic safety items like, the proper signage, because there are vehicles that they seem to think they have prior rights versus, and they're sharing that with young toddlers and that. So what do we actually get from this 50 grand where we can put some safety improvements in place without necessarily compromising the share with care notion, and then further, as I would understand it, then the point at which you're putting gates and all that stuff to allow sort of, easy events on the weekends or markets or whatever, that gets a bit more complex. So what exactly in stages would we get for this money? And also acknowledging Bunty's point about the Hilda Ross study as well.
So what this money would do would be to work with elected members to better understand how they would like Garden Place and Civic Plaza to work, and therefore how they want that section of shared zone to operate in order to support that. So there are a number of options available to elected members, from do nothing through to a closure. And there's all sorts of options in between, including ped malls, temporary closures, certain times of the day, temporary closures for events, those sorts of things. But all of those things need to be looked at in conjunction with how you want those adjacent spaces to work, and to look at how you make sure that they work safely. So the actual outputs of this I see as being very dependent on where the elected members want to take this piece of work and how they want those areas to work, because there may be a multiple of different outcomes as a result of this work.
And what time period are we talking about?
It would be in next financial year. It's a little bit like Councillor Rob's question. The scope, the expenditure and what you get out of it will be very much up to how elected members want to run that process. I'm responding to a request that I had for improving safety in that shed zone.
So in terms of safety, is there anything that council can do? I mean, obviously I get in terms of immediate safety that we can do now, in terms of, I think of that, the pedestrian car thing, and I support the shared process, the shared right away. Is there anything we can do now, or really is this absolutely dependent on this, the engaging in the process that you've just outlined to us?
So over the years, we have run various public awareness campaigns, trying to remind people of the legal requirement that shared zone has. So the signage that's in place either end of it is legally binding on motorists to give way to pedestrians. So we have done over the years various education campaigns, including signs in that area reminding people. But the reality is that most people continue to think that the car should be leading the way through there. So as I said, it is very much up to elected members as to where they want to go with this, if they want to go with this. I'm very much in your hands.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. You might want to bring your hand down when you've got a sec, Mayor Paula. It's still up. Thank
you.
Robin, just remind me currently the size of the signage that is at the either end of the cobbled area.
I don't have exact measurements, so it's reasonably large actually, but I don't have the dimensions to hand, sorry.
And can you remind me what the words say?
Shed zone, and then it has various symbols on it that is in accordance with the legal requirements.
And this issue's been raised in the past, and can you remind me what council staff said in regards to a more explicit sign saying vehicles give way to pedestrians?
I haven't had that discussion, but it's not a legal sign per se. We can always put some additional signage down there. We've put a lot of extra signage in with regard to parking, but the reality is most people don't read signs. So along with the education work that we've done, which included signage and trying to raise awareness, if that's what elected members would like me to do, I can, but I don't hold much hope that it will change any behaviours down there.
Could you confirm whether or not these relatively large signs that you're saying are on either side of both ends?
I believe they're only single-sided, and that's all that's required for any legal signage for that speed environment.
And when you say that they are large, are they the same size as a normal road sign?
They are larger than a give way or stop sign. They are a reasonably large sign. They're in the order of 1 metre by 2 metres type signs size. But I don't know the exact dimensions off the top of my head. Sorry, Councillor Ewan.
I'll leave my comments to the debate, but I walk past them every day and they seem pretty small to me. But thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Oosten.
Oh, golly, I'm just sorry. I was a bit distracted. And now I've lost complete train of thought.
Do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah, can you? Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, put your hand down.
Thanks.
And put it back up again and come back to you. Thanks. Deputy Mayor Taylor. Deputy Mayor Taylor? Oh, he's not in the room. He's gone out of the room. Where's he gone? Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Sorry, thanks for the second question. Robin, what would it cost to, we've discussed before the option of just making it pedestrian to deal with the events issue, that you could legally declare it a pedestrian mall for now so that you wouldn't necessarily have to go through the cost of the TMP applications. Is that possible, or would it still require the study to look at how you would physically make that work?
So there is costs to implementing a pedestrian mall status. So in order to do that currently, you have to work through a special consultative process. So that takes in the order of 6 to 9 months. Given where we are currently and the fact that we've got elections coming up at the end of this year, it would probably, we'd have to look carefully about when you did the consultation process so that you could then have some continuity with those people who are, the elected members who are working through the hearings process being involved with the decision process. And the head mall process is subject to challenge through the Environment Court if it's not done completely and that if people are not happy with the outcome. Even if we did work through that process, there would still need to be a TMP put in place to close the road. What it does do is it reduces the admin associated with getting those requests processed within that 42 days notice or through a council resolution. So it deals with that admin side up front, but it doesn't deal with the traffic management and the closure of it.
Okay, thank you. And the other part of that is with I guess there was some discussion around the fact that vehicles aren't giving people priority and that signs may not be that effective. If we were to put in, say, 2 ped crossings there or something, I guess it defeats the point of it being a shared zone, but then you do have a couple of areas where people have more dedicated crossing points. Is that something that you've looked at previously, or?
So we've done some study looking at where the desire lines are for pedestrians through there. They are generally spread across the length. There are a couple of locations where they're perhaps stronger. Yes, we could put a zebra crossing in. That kind of defeats the purpose of it being a shared zone, because that reinforces that actually that's the place that pedestrians should be crossing and for cars to give way to them there, but perhaps not in other locations. So there are a number of options available, and it really is a matter of working through if elected members want to do anything down there or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. You're back, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Robin, I'm a little confused. There's quite a lot of talk of safety in this particular thing. My memory of the original study was that it was a wider study on how all these areas would interrelate. Whirly Place, Red Square, Garden Place, Alexandra Street. And it seemed to be a lot of emphasis on the safety here, which was not my memory of this original study. And I mean, be happy for us to address a couple of safety issues like signs in the meantime. But I saw it as not a granular thing, but more where we would reach ad hoc decisions, but more of a wider study. Is that not what it was?
So that's my recommendation. I can go in and do ad hoc changes to Whirly, the shared zone.
Yep.
But without having clear direction and guidance about how elected members want those other areas to work, and to ensure that anything that I do in the shared zone supports that, it will be ad hoc. That is why we're recommending to do something that's a bit wider in its purview, so that we can then come back and say, knowing what we want, how we want those areas to operate, and therefore how that shared zone needs to operate to support it, these are the things that we should be doing in the shared zone.
Yep, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Van Oosten, is that a new hand? Oh, that was your old hand because you could go in blank. Sorry.
Yeah. Look, I've got my thoughts together now. Apologies. I'm sitting in a hot room now. I've turned the air conditioning on, so that's going to help with it, with my concentration. Robin, I understand that in the long-term plan we've got some funding in the in one of the years for Alexandra Street, which abuts it. Is that an opportunity for us, or could that be an opportunity for us to wrap this investigation into that?
Yes, you can. We've got some funding. It's in the order of $5 million. And again, it depends on what elected members want to achieve with that $5 million and exactly what sections of Alexandra Street they want to deal with. So depending on the standard of upgrade and the extent of the upgrade, that $5 million will either be spread very thin Marmite, or it might be a more localised significant upgrade.
And look, I recognise that as soon as we start talking about roads and treatments, $5 million doesn't account for much, but that the scope could include an investigation for the whole of that area, taking into account the way it relates to other parts of the of our CBD and connecting points. Also, would that?
Yes, if elected members wanted to give direction that funding be extended to cover that, then that would be great as well. Thank you.
Okay. Look, my second question is with regard to applications to use both of those areas at the same time, because I guess that's the time when it becomes its most critical conflict. I'm aware of Children's Day, you know, in a non-COVID year, that they take up quite a large part of and are a growing celebration, so take up both of those sites. Presumably they know the day they're going to be applying and can set up that well in advance of the 42 days notice?
Potentially. We do tend to find that most event organisers don't consider this as part of their process, so we do try hard to raise awareness for that. I do know that the likes of the Gallagher, is it Round the Bridges race and those sorts of things often shut off that area so that they can do all of their competitor information and getting your competitor packs and all of those sorts of things. So we do have the odd area event that does close, but not many. And I think generally when they're looking at events, they try to minimise their impact so that they don't get forced into having to close it.
And should they not apply in time? And I'm thinking also of the recent Christchurch incident where they, the council are asking some protesters to pay for traffic management costs that the council incurred. could there be a situation where council are burdened with those bills?
Potentially, if there was a safety issue and police asked us to deploy something, then I imagine that it would be something that council would have to pick up. I guess we try and work as proactively as we can with event organisers to minimise that occurrence.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Appreciate that, Mayor Paula.
Thank you. I'm going to move the staff recommendation with one small tweak, just to line it up with the LTP a little, but to move it into next financial year, which means the work would be done ahead of I've been talking with Sarah about this. So that means the investigation would be done ahead of the LTP. That's right, isn't it, Sarah? That's what we consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, when I asked, Robin said it would be possible, but it would just have to get the timing right. If that
can I just ask you procedurally, Mayor Paula? So what you're asking us to do is commit this to the following year, is that right?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
I don't know. I'm just trying to find out.
Yes, you can do that. What we're suggesting is that you're signalling that this will be included in the budget for the next year, year 3 of the LTP.
24.
And we'll then be able to incorporate that into your financial strategy graphs. So
I'm trying to bring a compromise, reading the will of the room, and make something that enables us to be set up for a really good tilt in the LTP, but not being on the hop when it comes to the LTP. Personally, I've put it in this year, but I'm adaptable. I'm adaptable.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing for the recommendation. And are you seconding it, Sarah? Thank you. Can we put that up, please? Go into debate. Is that just so you can see it, everyone? Make sure everyone's understanding. Amy?
Just coming up.
Thank you. Okay. I might start on the debate. Here we go. Here we go. Okie doke. Into debate. Can we go back to the faces now? Everyone's had a shut. Thanks. Thanks. Thank you. Councillors, I did ask staff to look at this, and that's no surprise because you've all heard me talk about it before. It is a share with care space, and I'm expecting it to stay a share with care space because I'm not asking for the permanent removal of cars. I acknowledge that cars service the businesses down there, and that remains an important aspect. However, we've seen with our own eyes the state of that rumble strip. We've seen with our own eyes the near misses. In fact, when we had our site visit and stood there, I'm sure Councillor Martin can attest to this, we saw some incredible close shaves. My view is the planter boxes, which do get moved around by the public for their own expediency when they want to park there or get something bigger through or whatever else, and we do have to keep putting those back, are a visual barrier to the pedestrian. And I think $50,000 before the LTP is a very small price. We've been debating a lot more this morning for public safety that adds to the walkability of our CBD. And to me, it's always been a safety project, not an amenity project. Although goodness only knows we could certainly improve the amenity of that space. It's not the most attractive connection between Civic Square, right in front of our own civic buildings, and Garden Place. The other thing is I don't believe that signs are an education. In fact, Robin said just as much. She said we could do something about the signs. That wouldn't necessarily change behaviour, and I don't believe it would. Although I do agree with you and that those signs are kind of pathetically small and invisible. They're above my head height. You know, I'm not a short person, right? And so it is pretty difficult for people to understand the nature. And Robin's 100% right when she says that vehicles actually believe they have priority, so they're not quite up with this whole share with care, and they won't stop for pedestrians. So I am a fan of this. I'll make no secret of it. I'd like it to go forward and be considered and investigated at this stage. I think it does actually lend a lot of value to the other CBD projects. We've got a beautiful cafe, an award-winning cafe, Cream, on the corner there. Another good cafe, Sierra, and people move, and the shopping mall, and people move between those spaces all of the time, constantly. The desire lines, Robin says that they are in multiple places, but there are two definitive desire lines that are more well used than the rest. And yes, right in front of where people want to walk, there is a bench and a rubbish bin. So I don't think we've got this all right. So I'm asking for your support, councillors, just to keep this conversation alive. I think we can get some really good win-wins from this. Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, hi, Mayor Paula. Look, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree with you. I've heard you say that signs will not change behaviour. I've heard you say that although you want a review, you don't want to change, you want vehicles to still have access. And having made those bold determinations, I'm not quite sure what we can expect out of a $50,000 review. Look, the elephant's in the room, and I was on council, and I think a few others were, when Marika Westphal put forward this idea of a shared space, and it was debated, and we did raise all of the concerns about this would only work if it was made very clear that pedestrians had a right of way over vehicles, and that vehicles needed to travel slowly. And the reality is, staff, in my opinion, from my recollection of discussions I've had with them over the years, there has been a high level of reluctance of putting bigger, bolder signs telling vehicles you have to give away to pedestrians. And there's been a real reluctance in putting speed signs saying you must travel slowly or at 10 kilometres an hour. Now, if I have misunderstood what staff have said in the past, I apologise. But I think this problem is easily fixed. We don't need $50,000 in the time of when 50,000 could go a long way. We may need some meaningful signs on either side that says speed limit is X, pedestrians have right of way, and we'll solve the problem, period.
Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. This last sort of half hour has added to my belief that the smaller the issue, the longer we debate it.
Yeah.
And it's just the nature of what we do, isn't it? Look, I'm afraid, thank you for trying to amend it to take it to the year after, but it's still a firm, fat, fair no from me. I'm all for keeping the conversation alive. I'm just not for spending 50K to have the conversation. And to me, this is really a plan on how we should plan it. It's not the time to be taking that sort of luxury. The other thing is, look, we set up the Central City Working Group for exactly this. And this does seem a little bit aside from where the Central City Working Group has gone with this. And I think that is the place to definitely bring it up and kick it around, rather than sort of having a little plum on the side. And I think I was zooming in this morning on the way back to the meeting, and I heard you, Mayor Paula, yourself say, let's cut our cloth to match our coat. Is that the right way around? Or cut our coat to match our cloth? Either way, this is actually kind of going against that. In fact, this is actually sticking a $50,000 epaulette on the side with material we don't actually have. So I kind of think it goes against a lot of the way we're going at the moment. So I will friendlily and respectfully but firmly be voting against this one.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor Taylor.
I'm sorry, Paula. I just had to take a phone call. Apologies. I'll stand down.
Okay, Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I use this space regularly, both as a motorist and a pedestrian. And I'd have to say it's not perfect, but I don't think, in your words, it's all wrong. It is a slow-moving zone if you're in a motor car. And I've seen grumpy drivers, and I've also seen inconsiderate pedestrians. So, there's a bit of a mixture there of good and bad. What I am concerned about is that the 50,000 might be the start of some very significant expenditure. I remember Mark saying that his little walkway that he was planning in Garden Place for cycles and that could be done, for a few $1,000s. But I see this as part of the Hilda Ross Way, I think it was called. This is part of this being sort of included in, which means when you look at the whole area, it may in fact lead us to a complete review of Garden Place again. And I certainly don't want to be on council if that's likely to be on the agenda. Look, it's small expenditure, but when you add together all of this expenditure, we're currently sitting on a budget blowout of about $12 million. So we really have to stop the spending, bring it back in and see what is absolutely necessary, what can be avoided for the time being, and have some empathy to our ratepayers who will ultimately, one way or the other, have to pay for what our spending decisions are today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paula. Look, I won't be supporting this either, and I wanted to assure Councillor Wilson that his recollection is 1,000% correct. We did. You look like you're in the stalls cheering for something. It has been a source of frustration why we didn't simply just put in, as Councillor Wilson has said, a larger sign with the speed saying pedestrians have the right of access. And I myself have also raised this several times. So I'm not convinced that the 50,000 to plan for a future plan is very smart. I would personally just like to see some signs up. Yes, we have to fix the cobblestones, and we should never use cobblestones in a public area ever again, but that will be for an LTP decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sarah. Deputy Mayor Taylor and Councillor Sarah.
Yes, look, sorry, Paula, this has not been my best work. I got interrupted twice during this debate. It's not my best moment. So I understand you've suggested putting it out a year. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, look, I have no problem with that. I think at some stage we do need to do a study on how all these pieces fit together. How does Whirly Place with a hotel, with TGH's plans fit in with Red Square, with Garden Place, with Alexandra Street, etc. I think the work does need to be done, and I think it does need to be done either as part of the next LTP or before the LTP, as you're suggesting. So look, I'm happy to bump this out a year, which means no spending on it next year, I believe. And in terms of safety, look, to me, if there's a safety thing, I'd support a couple of signs going up in the meantime. Not too much more, because I wouldn't want to see too much money spent until we come up with a full picture for the whole shebang. Apologies for my interruptions during this. So I would be supporting you bumping it out a year.
Oh, there you go. Wow, unexpected. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. So yeah, I suggested bumping it out because I think we do have a lot of things that are putting pressure on this coming year, financial year, and some big safety issues that we're going to be talking about soon in regard to places like Te Rapa Road and in Ulster Street and that kind of thing. But I do think, contrary to some others, I do think that this area is problematic, and there's particularly problematic for people in the disability community. It's been raised with me a number of times in terms of them feeling quite unsafe using this area, and there's a lot of uncertainty around, you know, who has priority, and right now it generally is a large, you know, 1 to 2 ton vehicles that have priority. So there's that, and it's also before the LTP. I do think that, you know, the timing means that if there is some work that needs to be done, it can be factored into that discussion. So I will be supporting this at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I still don't agree with the motion. I think even pushing out a year implies that it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I haven't said that that often today. I actually agree with Ewan and with Angela. You know, that it's not broken. There are some small things that can be done to make it miles better. And that would be a better, far cheaper, in fact, probably cost neutral way of actually improving the situation, seeing whether that's all that's needed. Now, look, I'm often accused sometimes by some very unkind people in this meeting of being anti-car. In this case, I think it's reasonable for slow speed vehicles to be able to share that space with pedestrians and cyclists, even utes, Councillor Donovan. It's not broken. If we want to look at safety for pedestrians, and especially for the disability community, there are far more serious areas we ought to be looking to spend $50,000 or any amounts in. One of the arguments that was put forward for limited vehicle movement being allowed in this area, way back when we first did it, was to reduce the very large city block sizes that we have in Hamilton. It was suggested at the time from a study we saw that we had the largest average city block size of any city in Australasia, over 20,000 people, I think, something like that. It caused large circular vehicle movements, looking for parks, and all coming to sort of the one edge of that area to get the old entrance to the underground car park. Changing that entrance has made for more efficient vehicle movements in terms of looking for parks, and that's environmentally better than having very big city blocks. And I think there's quite a few studies around that would look at that too. So from several different aspects, I think it's an unnecessary move by all means. And I agree with Angela on this. Next time we resurface it, look at something more durable than concrete blocks. So the way they bounce up and down, even when you ride a cycle over it, does tend to slow you down a bit. So there's some, and the noise as well. So there's some advantage in that, but it ain't broken. It doesn't need fixing. It needs perhaps some tweaking.
Thank you. Councillor Van Oosten.
Look, thanks very much. I asked questions earlier about Alexandra Street and the timing for when we will be doing that work. And it strikes me that we can't just think about 1 or 2 areas in isolation of the rest. And I really favour being able to wrap these up together so that there is some real connecting of our areas within our city. It's discussion that happens through Jeff's committee, and that's a really good place for us to be able to do it. But certainly this issue is something that won't go away, that we need to be able to take some really considered thinking about, and to integrate it along with the considerations for upgrades to Alexandra Street would be a much better way to go. I think by delaying it a further year, and thank you, Mayor Paula, for that concession, that helps us to line up some of those other considerations as well. And so from my perspective, I think that the timing of that is a lot better, and I feel happier supporting it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Naidu-Rowe.
Thank you. I support the intent of this. I support the safety improvements. I'm all for that. I want us to, like a few of you have said, think bigger picture, larger scale, more surrounding streets and how that works into it. I'm also quite passionate about looking at Garden Place, even though I know many people will shudder at the thought. I want to look at the lighting in Garden Place, look at play elements and how we can activate that space more. So I'm hoping that this will lead to a larger conversation come next LTP if I'm still around. So yeah, for now, I'm happy to support this considering it's delayed a year, but I'm hoping that it does lead to a larger conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, thank you. I strongly support our Deputy Mayor on this issue. I understand you support it too. No, I don't really. I don't strongly support it, but I do think that it's work that needs to be done in terms of the activation of this area. I actually, and I well remember when Marika and others introduced, proposed the shared zone. I was at the time, and Dave will recall, a strong skeptic. Having said that, I think the concept of the shared zone is actually appropriate and has worked. So in supporting the delay, I don't want this to be a thin end of the wedge to do away with that shared zone unless there was compelling reason. But I do think we need to make that shared zone work better. I do want to have the conversation where we can better activate Garden Place, Civic Square, Whirly Place, the totality of that shared public space. And I think in terms of the delay, that is appropriate. I do strongly urge staff, and we need to get on with this. What Ewan said is 1,000% right. The signage needs to be improved. It may not look particularly flash in the meantime, but I do think there needs to be now much better and much blunter signage and penalties that may apply, etc. So I will be supporting this delay as part of that comprehensive work. And also I would make the point to my good colleague Mark Bunting. I think that the Hilda Ross walkway is a fantastic thing, and I'm hoping that in this particular proposal that obviously reference and context can be made to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, I'm afraid you've already spoken in debate. So we're into right of reply. Look, if I lose, I lose. But in good conscience, I felt I had to bring this to the table. And actually, there's been really good debate around it. Let me be quite clear what this is not. This is not anti-car going through there. And it's definitely not about a revamped Garden Place. It is not. But what it is about safer sharing. And I support one of the comments of Sarah, which was around the disability sector, as well as women with children in pushchairs and so on. It's about sharing in a safer way to me. It's about less maintenance, because we've all observed and acknowledged that the rumbling bricks have ongoing maintenance and cost associated with them. The Hamilton Central Business Association has raised with us on a number of occasions their concerns, and they've also done some foot traffic assessments that have informed Robin's work as well. I heard clearly from Robin that, and I'm not opposed to signs. I am quite happy with bigger signs, because I agree. I said to you, they're above my head, they're too small. Absolutely agree with you, and that signs need to be improved. Having said that, what I heard clearly was it won't necessarily change behaviour enough. So that would just be a starting point, not the end of it. This did come through the Central City Advisory, and I do agree with Jeff in respect to we should see all threads of the work coming together. I wanted to be reasonable and realistic and set ourselves up for success. So I have moved this out of this year's budget. I recognise that we're in particularly hard times. We'll come back to this at another time. But the other point I do want to say is that I was also pro making it easier to activate Garden Place. And I've heard from multiple groups. You heard what Robin said about the considerable cost to groups if they want to come in and run an event in Garden Place with the traffic management plan. It's out of reach for many. It's out of reach. And then they have to come to people like us for funding because they can't pay for the management plan to open up Garden Place for public events. Now, all of that doesn't make sense to me, but I do want a rich conversation going forward. So I do appreciate the debate and the nature of the debate today. And we'll go to the vote. Jeff? Oh, you changed your mind.
The motion is lost. 5 for, 7 against.
Cool, thank you. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for the good debate. We'll all live to fight another day. All right, next one.
Me Potter, are we looking at a coffee break at some point, or are we?
Yes, let's do that. Let's have a 10-minute coffee break, and then we'll go through to 5 because I have to finish at 5. I've got other things on, and then we'll be back tomorrow.
Cool.
So a quick 10-minute stretch.
10 minutes.
Sounds good.
Yeah, 10 minutes, everyone. Cool. I'm sure no one cares, but this is leading me to hanker after chocolate, something terrible. But I'm not doing chocolate. I'm having healthy, Angela. I'm eating healthy.
Yes, I was going to say you're not allowed chocolate.
I'm not. But this meeting makes
not
me
allowed. You're choosing to not have any. Never deprive yourself.
Well, exactly.
Why can't you have chocolates?
Oh no, I'm just I'm just
Are you a chocoholic?
Saving up for Easter.
Yeah. No, once in a while I have to sort of pare back on foods that irritate my allergies and things. So it's no dairy right now. That's what it really is. Which
dairy,
puts chocolate out of the scheme for a bit longer.
Didn't you have some vegan chocolate last year?
Vegan chocolate? No.
I thought you tried some. I thought, mate, was it Amy brought some into the chamber?
She might have.
In the chamber last year?
I know. I think you threw chocolate out and ate the wrapping.
Amy is my saviour generally, and by now I'd normally be in her office raiding a chocolate drawer, but but the self discipline is real.
Yes.
And sadly, with all the lovely goodies you have in your garden, I'm just too far away right now.
She's growing a big chocolate tree as well.
Yeah.
Great big
actually, good growing weather at the moment with that rain and sun.
Oh, it's amazing.
I did just move my mind there toward a plum, but I haven't got one of those either. So there
I've
you
got
go.
a plum tree.
Chocolate covered plums. Now you're talking.
Oh, stop it.
That'll be all right.
All right, let's carry on. We are now on to something that I'm sure will easily be digested, which is the Comet and Meteor route infrastructure, page 221.
Through the chair, I'll quickly introduce this.
Thank you, Martin.
For debate. So you'll recall back in December last year at the Infrastructure Ops Committee that we brought you a paper about the Meteor and Comet routes and studies that we completed. Through those studies, we'd identified quite a bit of infrastructure required over the next however number of years to support improvements to both those services, and also to support the extra investment the Regional Council is putting into those services to increase patronage. You will also recall at that meeting that you passed a resolution to reallocate some funding into this into the draft annual plan for from Boundary Road Heathry Terrace project to the Meteor and Comet routes, and that local share was $2.646 million. And in this paper that you're seeing today, we've got $4 million. Now, that $4 million does also include that $2.646 million. So what we're asking for in this paper is an additional $1.354 million. So we can get on and deliver some of these key pieces of infrastructure to support both those services.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. My question was actually about the fact that we had allocated quite a sum of money from a roundabout, and I just wanted to catch up on that. Can I ask why this is coming to an annual plan rather than LTP? What's the rationale behind that? It's a large sum of money to be asking for.
It's $1.3 million. Yeah, I mean, essentially the projects that we're delivering, there's an opportunity, we feel, from a staff perspective, that there's lots to do out on the network, and we'd like to, put it to you to see if you would like to fast track some of those projects. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's down to you as a group of elected members to determine whether you want to do that or not. But our recommendation is we've got a lot to do out there. We'd like to fast track some of these projects before the next LTP, if possible.
Further questions, Jeff?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, I'm having trouble, Martin, reconciling the 1.3 million. I'm just adding up the amounts now that is in Sarah's email. Sorry, for Amy's email this morning, which seems to be the $4 million, which is the figure in the box on page 221. So what is it? Is it 4 million that you're now asking for, or 1.3 million?
Yeah, so just clarify that, Councillor Rob. The 4 million does include the allocation or reallocation that you've already approved at that Infrastructure Ops Committee of 2.646 million. So what we're actually asking for is a top up to bring it up to $4 million. So $1.354 million to make it up to $4 million all up. That's the grand total.
So none of these costs were in the long-term plan that we approved about 9 months ago?
No, and the reason that they weren't was because at that time we hadn't done the studies, and there was a criticism from Waka Kotahi around that, you know, you put forward, say, what they consider a bulk fund, but no projects attached to it. So that they're very reluctant to fund in those situations. They want some certainty around the type of things that they're going to invest in. So doing the studies has actually put us in a really good position going forward to try and grab some Waka Kotahi funding in the future at the next NLTP.
So we kind of got caught out then that we should have really have had the study completed before June of last year.
Yeah, correct. I mean, we just didn't have the resources in place to do that piece of work at the time when the LTP was put together.
Okay. Is all of the 4 million subject, does all of the 4 million qualify with certainty for Waka Kotahi 51%? Is it 51% subsidy?
We're unlikely to get any subsidy on this $4 million simply because the activity class in the current NLTP has been exhausted. What our hope is that in year 3 of this current NLTP, funding may come available in that activity class because councils can't deliver some of their projects around the country. And so the reports actually put us into a good place to try and grab some of that money in the future.
So if we did the work in year 2, which is what is being advocated here, there's a chance that we might get the funding after we've done the work in year 3.
Robin may clarify this, but Waka Kotahi generally don't like doing retrospective funding on projects. I have known them done it in the past, but it's very rare that they do it. Yeah.
Okay. So the end result is that we will fund the whole 4 million and get no subsidy at all from Waka Kotahi. Is that a reasonable conclusion to draw?
That's correct, Councillor Rob, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thanks, Martin.
Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Martin, the infrastructure we're talking about here is for our key routes, both current and near future, but not anything else in particular. Is that right?
That's right, Councillor Dave. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give us rough ballpark figures on the Comet route, which has already been going, on its patronage growth over, and a percentage-wise, over the routes that it replaced?
I don't have patronage figures up to hand, Councillor.
Okay, that is something that was asked for when this issue last was discussed, which I think would have been helpful to the meeting, not just ballpark figures, because I know there was significant increase, but I don't actually know the exact percentage. So I'm disappointed we haven't got that there, because it's important we know the reason why these routes and not other routes would have infrastructure funded, I would suggest. Going on to Rob's very pertinent question about potential or lack of NZTA subsidy, the Comet and the Meteor and other key routes like the Orbiter as well, they're subsidised significantly by NZTA, Waka Kotahi, aren't they?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So why, can you give me an answer as to why the government agency of a government that's calling for more mode shift towards public transport and active transport would fund the operation of a service, but not the physical conditions in which that service needs to operate with the upgrade of them?
Oh, look, through the chair, I think that they're happy to support and subsidise public transport infrastructure across the city, and they do that already, certain elements of it. But this stuff is outside our NLTP application that we made because we hadn't completed the studies in time for it to be included into the NLTP application. So it wasn't considered as part of that financial allocation.
Okay, was that advised to council at the time, like last year when we were doing the LTP? We
hadn't even thought about or started the studies before the LTP.
So
when I arrived, I was probably a little bit late in getting going, and yeah, the NLTP, the LTP had sort of happened before I got my feet under the desk. To be honest with you.
Yeah, prior to that, and someone else is probably going to have to answer this, Martin, because you're in the firing line, but as you say, you had barely arrived at that point. Did we not have a discussion on LTPs and this particular infrastructure for the key services, which was first held down at the veranda, an off-site discussion? Do any management staff remember that, whereby this issue was raised by Councillor O'Leary at the time and others supporting her, and staff indicated that although we didn't have money specifically in the right years, we would be able to juggle expenditure to match the needs for these key routes, for infrastructure for these key routes?
So through the chair, in response to that, that was a conversation that elected members prioritised the funding for the public transport network. So yes, there was conversations around how we could fund the Comet route in particular, particularly with the lack of progress being made, and that there was funding during the 10-year plan that was pushed out from years 1 to 5 into the back end of the 10-year plan as a result of the 10-year plan conversation. So there was money being looked at for year 1 of the 10-year plan to kickstart the Comet route. I don't recall any money post that, hence until the Comet study has come through the Infrastructure Operations Committee, and that's why we're here today.
Okay, so you don't recall the discussions that were held then about perhaps some money being available from the transport centre upgrade to go towards this area, NZTA's own funding for the elements of the Comet route that were on State Highway 3, for instance, being available, some things like that. Some discussions about other ways to skin the cat of supplying infrastructure for the Comet route within our LTP and other available monies.
So in terms of, there is always opportunities from those other projects for the Comet route in partnership with Waka Kotahi and the Glenview Bus Hub, and to deliver on those with regional councils' prioritisation. And then these are in addition to those. These projects are in addition to those projects discussed. Unfortunately, if those conversations had been had with a previous unit manager, I'm not too sure of those. But I know that you will remind me of those if there were.
It's not an if. But
Just when.
not an if that I'll remind you, but it's
Yeah.
not an if that they happened. Yeah,
Okay.
they did.
They did.
Yeah, and so you would then be understanding if elected members felt a little let down in this area. That's a rhetorical question. You don't need to answer that either, Lisa. It would be an unfair question, perhaps. Okay, that'll do me. Thanks, Paula.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paula. Martin, am I right to say that the next time around, if we delay this or keep it unfunded, we could apply for funding under the next NLTP?
That's correct, Councillor Ewan, yes.
And so being a little bit patient could save us a couple of million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say that you're asking simply for an additional 1.35 million. But Martin, isn't true that if in fact we chose not to proceed currently, we wouldn't have to borrow the 4 million, right?
Correct. So you have a resolution on the block from that committee back in December. So we need to take account of that. But yes, you are correct.
On that point, there are multiple resolutions of council that are being re-decided here today. Often they've been rejected. So that's not unusual, is it?
No.
If we choose, just a couple of questions, could you just remind me, in the report it confirms that the patronage has dropped considerably in light of COVID. Could you just remind me the percentage drop of patronage?
Sorry, I don't have that data with me. I got the information from Regional Council to include in this report at the time. So I don't have the exact figures. But based on previous presentations from Regional Council at Infrastructure Ops committees, we've seen a significant impact of COVID on patronage, and that still is having an impact across the board, plus the fact that a lot of people now are choosing to work from home, so that also has an impact as well. But I don't have the details, unfortunately.
And as such, from your experience in public transport, delaying this till the LTP would not only, would it not let gosh, I've got tongue-tied, for bus users to return, and would it not also enable us to apply for the funding under the NLTP process?
Yeah, look, a number of the projects that we're promoting not only support improvements to the public transport network, but they also support safety and connectivity for walking and cycling as well. So there's elements to these projects that deliver more than just a good connection between bus stops. So we must remember that as we go through this process as well.
But they would have been debated at the LTP just a mere year ago, and the next time would be the next LTP. Wouldn't that not be the case?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Bunting.
Thank you. Hello, Martin.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, just sort of getting in the weeds a bit. Thank you, Amy, for that. The additional information this morning. That was really quite eye-opening. I think Councillor Ewan has kind of covered my questions. Councillor Dave asked about or Rob, wasn't it, asked about the government subsidy. So essentially there's no funding from NZTA for this proposal.
I'll just quickly answer that. We are following up with them. They haven't ruled it out, but they said, they'd like to have a discussion about it. That's at a local level here in Hamilton. So they haven't ruled it out, but they are obviously mindful of the fact that it's difficult to give an answer in year two of an NLTP period.
Yeah. I think sort of get that one. Thank you. All right. Can you explain the OPEX of 200,000 a year as well as soon as we start this? What's that for?
I might ask for some support here from Robin, but I mean the consequential OPEX is we've said around about $200,000. I mean that's mindful that the projects that we'll be delivering are things like light control pedestrian crossings, so they have a higher level of maintenance and operations than say just putting in a standard zebra crossing or something like that. So you've got all those electricity supplies and just ongoing maintenance of controller units and stuff like that.
Okay.
Also, a lot of the activities required to maintain this infrastructure will require a higher level of temporary traffic management when contractors go in as well, because they're on sort of busier routes. Maintenance for signs and road markings as well. And Robin, maybe other things that I haven't thought about.
Drainage is the only other additional thing, because we'll have race safety platforms, so we'll have additional catch pits, etc. And there are increasing standards required for stormwater treatment before we discharge to the river. So that, in addition to Martin's points.
So if the platforms weren't raised but were signalised, that would be cheaper, you're saying, or would be? Okay, no, that's just too much detail. Okay, let's favourite subject, in-lane bus stops. So you're telling me, according to this, that there would be 2 places in Te Rapa Road where we would be creating bus stops on the road, in the road, right there, like Victoria Street.
Potentially, it still would need to go through the design process that would include safety audits to determine what the best outcome would be. Bearing in mind that it is a 60k speed limit environment on that area of Te Rapa Road, so that would need to be taken into account through the design process. I can't say categorically that it would be in lane. My preferred option, as you know, and international best practice and best practice in New Zealand is to put in lane. I know some of you would probably disagree.
I'm going to pull you up on that one there. In lane, do we have, like, for example, do you have an accurate count of traffic movements in Te Rapa Strait?
We would have traffic counts for Te Rapa Strait, yes.
Can you?
I don't know what they are off the top of my head. Robin, do you know what the numbers would be?
No, not off the top of my head.
Well, we did a recent thing on the roundabout where that fellow lost his life. We must have really recent data on that.
Oh, we've got the data, and I can look it up, but off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to give you an accurate figure.
But
if you want me to look it up, I can do that.
Okay, but it wouldn't take a lot of data to tell us that that's actually one of our busiest roads.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree with you, Councillor Mark. Yeah.
And we've got that slip lane to the side down there. We've got quite a lot of potential for other ideas other than the inline bus lanes.
Slip lane, sorry, I don't know.
There's a slip lane down next to, I think we're talking Home Straight.
Road and Sport.
Oh, yeah.
Goes in at Road and Sport and comes out at the Fairview.
Yeah, with a great big wide island in between the two of them, etc. Right, okay, so
I think, Councillor Mark, if elected members have given us some feedback about the in-lane bus stops, and we're willing to take that on board and to look at extra alternates depending on the locations. And Te Rapa is obviously one where it needs to be looked at very thoroughly before any decision would be made on that.
Yeah,
and that can be done in conjunction with elected members. Yeah,
I'm trying to make this into a question. I would probably need to see the removal of any reference to in-lane bus stops at all before I supported this. And this is obviously going to be my bone of contention with this one. Okay, and the Ulster Street bus stops. I see we've got a bit of replacement value in those ones as well. The 900. Oh, that's the pedestrian crossing and the bus stops. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So do we still have a commercial arrangement with our bus stops?
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Are they cost neutral still, the shelter ones?
yes, we get a revenue stream from those, so we actually make money out of that.
Okay, good.
It's only the ones with the digital billboard. So, Councillor Mark, just to be clear.
Oh, okay.
It's not all bus stops. It's only the ones with the digital billboards.
Yes, just the ones with the advertising on it that we get the revenue stream from. Not our standard ones. They don't maintain those for us.
Okay, that's I'll probably have to take that offline because I don't want to breach any commercial sensitivity on that one. I'd be keen to understand that a bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. No, look, there's not much further I can go on that one. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Robin.
Councillor Van Oosten.
Thanks, Robin and Martin. It seems that there's a lot of debate about co-funding, and we might be too late for Waka Kotahi. Government have a real commitment to addressing climate change, and specifically around emissions. And I note that the budget isn't due till the 19th of May, and that in that budget there potentially could be some allocation for addressing those climate change and emissions for cities like ours. Should that be a fund that we could apply to, would we need to have set aside some budget to contribute alongside that?
I would suggest that we don't know yet. I guess it always puts you in a better position if you're seen to be coming to the party as well, but it's hard to know at this stage what that may be.
And until we receive the information, okay, I was just going to say exactly what you said. Until we receive information about what that budget is, what it will fund, we don't know at this point. We have no idea.
But that any decision could then come back through the Finance Committee, presumably?
That's correct. Yes.
Kia ora, thank you.
I was wondering if my speakers have stopped.
Mute, Paula.
You're muted,
No.
Paula. Paula, muted.
Oh, goodness, sorry. I wondered why there was a big pause there. Sarah, and I think
You thought
Mark
Maxine was still asking her question, didn't you?
No.
Thanks.
Mark, you've still got your hand up, by the way.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Martin, looking at the list of priority projects that have been circulated, what would be the biggest priorities in terms of supporting the already planned investment from WRC?
I think, discussions with WRC is around connectivity, so people can access the bus stops and the services more readily. So the crossings that we've highlighted would be a high priority for them, and also the Lake Road, Commerce Street roundabout is another high priority for them, because that lets them improve the route of their service as well, and add some efficiencies into that part of the network once that meteor service is up and running. So yeah, those would be their priorities, the crossings and that roundabout on that list.
Is that in terms of the crossings, are there any that would be potentially more urgent than others? Like, obviously they're across pretty busy unsafe roads, but
look, I think certainly the ones on Ulster Street and Te Rapa Road are probably the ones that people would say, or users of bus facilities and WRC would say, would be the priority ones. The Ulster Street situation is pretty ugly, trying to cross there. I actually remember crossing there after a rugby game with you, Councillor Sarah, and we had to sprint across the road, and it was quite difficult. I felt like I was playing out on the wing for the All Blacks at the time.
Yeah, no, I remember that. It was quite scary watching people. Thanks. Okay, so those three would probably be the top kind of ones, I guess. Yeah. Acknowledging it's difficult to prioritise. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, Mayor Paula, just looking at the time, and I recall Councillor McPherson asking for that information, and I, as Chair of Infrastructure, think it would help the conversation. I like to do a procedural motion that we park this item. I don't think we're going to get through it in 15 minutes anyway.
Happy to do that anyway, Angela.
Great. Okay. And so if it can come, or if there's time for it to come, it should be able to come back with that information.
So we'll just adjourn, and we won't have to do that procedural motion.
That's a good idea.
By agreement of because I can see there's a few strands, and also I know that some people in the background are thinking about some adjustments, so it'll give you a little bit of time to get that through. So staff, in terms of, I know this has been a long day, and it's going to take longer than the LTP, crazy as that seems, but look, I put that down to good passion and interest by elected members in projects. It's kind of
the LPTP time by the time we finish this anyways.
Might be too. So staff, tomorrow, what time are we starting, Amy? 9:30.
9:30 was the intention. So shortly I'll remove the briefing from your calendars and swap in your plan meeting instead.
Excellent. Okay, councillors. On that basis.
And into that could go all day.
Well, that's in your hands.
No, in terms of timing, just
I think so.
I think it's going to take a long time. I think people are dedicated to debate. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. If we're going to, it's a good suggestion from Councillor O'Leary, and so we're going to get some more information on bus patronage. Could we get some on bus financials as well? It'd be good to get some bit more detail on how the bus system is faring now, and the trends over the last 3 years would be great. I've been searching for that and trying to bring it out of the diligent reports, but it's not easy to get because
sorry, Jeff.
The more information, the better. Would just be nice, I suppose.
The other information that would be handy is, and we asked this about it a year ago, and in fact had a meeting with WRC about it, was the amount that they have put in from their budget, their LTP, to these key bus services and routes, what they've allocated, because we were trying to make sure with the agreement of our whole council that they were synchronised.
And look, while we're on the shopping list, I'd really like to see traffic numbers for Te Rapa Strait, please.
Thank you. And Rob?
Yeah, and while we're considering this, perhaps some thought from staff overnight as to, the prospect of getting Waka Kotahi funding. If we can get this $4 million for $2 million, then to me it makes sense to wait a year or two and not approve the expenditure until we have a guarantee or a greater chance of getting the funding, which at the moment we have.
So thank you. Let's grip that all up, councillors, for tomorrow. Come fresh, and how we get through tomorrow. And I'm not trying to stifle debate. I'll come back to you, Julie. I'm not trying to stifle debate, but just how we come through tomorrow will be in the hands of how much you want to debate. But on the other hand, I want to say a big thanks for the way we have debated for the large part, not entirely, but for the large part. It's been very constructive and collegial debate, and we win some, we lose some in politics. That's the way it is. But you go with your conviction and the projects that matter to you, or the projects that matter to your local community, and that's what we're doing here. So people can't say that this council doesn't carefully consider all matters. That is for sure. Julie.
Yes, Mayor Paula, I just wanted to remind you that we had talked about moving to PX to continue the discussion on the Peacock Stage 1 project.
It's not happening tonight, Julie, because I've got a hard finish at 5, and I just don't think starting something else will be useful.
Ooh, Paula's got a date.
Yeah, such an exciting Zoom date. So thank you, everyone. Sorry, Julie, we can do that. We can do that in due course tomorrow, and it's just the way it is. And personally, I'm reading the room and seeing people looking a little frazzled. Zoom days are hard days, hard, long days. So I think we need to rest our brains, go and spend some family time, eat something good, get out in the fresh air, starting in tomorrow.
One more thing, can you please send a photo of you and Sarah dashing across the road, please? Because I think that will be really funny to watch.
Martin?
Yeah, the All Black Wing.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, Amy, I missed that. What time are they convening tomorrow? Are they or
Yes, 9:30.
9:30? 9:30.
9:30. Whole lot of time.
Sorry, staff. Don't lose the will. We're getting there. Slowly eating the elephant bite by bite.
No, it's all good. You're chomping through it. just 2 legs and a back rear end to go.
She's a big beast. She's a bigger beast than we hoped for. All right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Amy, you missed a good opportunity for a practical joke on Chris then. I heard it was 6:30.
Thank you.
6:30 a.m.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate your thought.